like to invite our guests to take their seats, the one they prefer. So Alek Tarkowski, Natalia Sielewicz, Iza Rutkowska, Team Rowe, who has just arrived from Boston, I believe. Just minutes ago, in fact, seconds. Yeah, Agnieszka Polkowska, Mr. Jawahar Singh, yeah, we have a very interesting bunch of experts from very different areas. Please take notice that we have art curators, we have designers, we have innovation specialists and visionaries, and experienced academics. And we will be talking about lifestyles. What is exactly lifestyle? And please start with this definition. How do you define a lifestyle? Alek Tarkowski, I just looked at you, so maybe you'll start.
This is a very good question because my mother was a sociologist, just as I am by training, and in the 80s she took part in breakthrough research in Poland on lifestyles. It was really amazing work they did, and came up with definitions that are no longer relevant, I think, at all. Because back then they would say lifestyles is something that sociologists would define because we had no trendsetters, no marketers. But I think even that is no longer relevant. I think today more and more lifestyles are built by technology, by data and algorithms.
This is interesting.
Come back to that in a second.
Yeah, so lifestyles are built by technology. Here you can see dictionary definitions. I don't know if you agree with them. How do you think about this, Agnieszka? Because you are a lifestyle specialist. What does it mean?
Thank you for giving me voice. I think it's still relevant, actually, but it changes very quickly because as by definition, is it some kind of set of behavior? But I think that this set of behavior is set by values and needs of us, of humans, of consumers. It depends how we name it exactly. But it shifts very quickly because of drivers of change like economical, environmental, societal or technological, as we're speaking here. So I think it's still relevant, but it changes quickly because of technology mostly.
So we have now two thoughts that lifestyle is being accelerated by technology, but it also concerns our needs, our habits, our values. What else would you add? Maybe Mr. Singh?
Well, I mean, for me, lifestyle is the way of matter of living, all right? I still value the old definition where it's values and attitude, which means what is defined by the Greeks also, where the elders were feeding the information to the youngers, the way of life and everything. And I fully agree with you, things are changing as the environment, landscape around us is changing. So definitely there's a lot of, I would say, the matter which affects on it's like the media, you have the countries, the how we behave, how we live with other people. So I think the lifestyle actually develops over the years when the person is growing.
So it develops. It's an idea in process, right? Okay, maybe we'll move, or if you have something to add to this. Okay, so maybe we can move a bit further and ask whether, how do lifestyles accelerate our modes of consumption? Do they reproduce or amplify social inequalities, for example?
So I'll start. First of all, thank you for having me here, everyone. I'm sorry that my flight came in a little bit late, but I guess almost just in time. First, I guess I would say that in the United States, we're starting to use the word lifestyle in a couple of ways frequently. You may have heard the term lifestyle business, and a lifestyle business is a business where the definition is where the entrepreneur is not so interested in profits or building a huge company, but rather they're interested in living well, enjoying time with their family, enjoying time with friends.
Has this anything to do with benefit corporations?
Well, the benefit corporation would be a term we use for a company that is trying to make the world better. Lifestyle business would be one where the entrepreneur makes a choice to come home earlier for dinner to be with their kids, and instead of staying later to win one more contract and make more money. And I raise it because I think the way we think about the word lifestyle now in the United States has to do with making choices that prioritize the human side of us and deprioritize some of the classical notions of what success is. So it's a kind of a term with a lot of connotation. The second way that we use the word lifestyle now in the United States refers to inclusion. It used to be in the United States that we had one idea of what a family should be like, a father, a mother, kids, grow up, go to school, etc. And now in the United States, we have a much more wide definition of how it's okay to be a person, including if you're gay, if you have other kinds of things in your life, you don't want to have a family, lots of different variations. What we now refer to as a kind of a diverse community. So when you hear the word lifestyle in the United States, sometimes we're talking about encouraging people to embrace the lifestyle that they want to have for them. It's a way of accepting differences within society. So I would just start by saying, for us, when we think about new lifestyle, we're thinking about a kind of a reprioritization, focusing on being more human. And we're thinking about accepting the lifestyles of different people that may not be the same as the lifestyle that you want.
I may promise that we can get back to this in a few minutes, okay? But I'd really like to address this question to Natalia, because I remember a few years ago I saw on your exhibition that you created together with Łukasz Onduda a very interesting piece of work made by a Chinese artist who was working in a factory, Apple factory in China, 45 days just to buy an iPad that was worth the same as he earned through this 45 days. Can you give a bigger picture for this?
Sure. So the artist himself was trying to estimate how much labor he actually needs to perform in order to afford, a great token of artistic lifestyle and of creative class. So an Apple computer or tablet. In this case, this was a tablet. So in the end, he was trying to reveal how also, art practitioners, not just creative class, but let's say art practitioners, so the class or like the part of lifestyle that I'm part of, who are often associating with very left field politics, are actually buying into certain streams of lifestyle that might seem creative, user-friendly, that enhance our work. And yet, at the end of the day, this is based on very difficult labor conditions of the others. But to go back to your question about lifestyle and to piggyback on what Alek was saying, I also perceive lifestyle as a certain software, maybe not necessarily something driven by algorithms, but an operating software, not to say an ideology. So it's not just about values, but it's actually it's something that encapsulates your whole existence and on which different brands and oftentimes corporations.
And do you believe that we choose our lifestyle? So we choose our software, or we are being programmed by it?
I think smart brands predict your software and they build a lifestyle for you before you realize.
Yeah, and Apple is a perfect example. So, for example, iPod was a generation turnover, right? So it was a big change. And you recall the story that iPod iPod took over 60% of the market. That was already well defined, yeah, but by other brands. And if you recognize the competition for iPod, that was technology. So you can see for Intel, it was elder a bit, but then Dell approached, and they failed with this product, right? So people choose iPods because they were better for their lifestyles, right? So that would be an example of how we are being programmed in a way. Or you disagree? Maybe Iza now.
Yeah, well, maybe it's good that you question me now, because in my work, I have this experience of working with people that still don't have electricity, or they don't have TVs and computers in their houses. So I see how new technologies impact them as well. But I see that in young people that are not playing anymore in backyards, but they are, for example, like staying in front of this smartphones or things like this. And I see how being together and thinking about lifestyle as intuition bring people happiness back together, like to like how by integrating people and skipping new technologies, you can bring them together again, and how happy they are without iPhones and without things like this still. So
Yeah. So maybe Natalia, and yes, Natalia.
I just wanted to say that I'm not sure if you're aware of this article about different CEOs from Silicon Valley, that most of them in their not in the upbringing, but in their family life, they choose to minimize the screen time for the kids. So this will become momentarily a new lifestyle for like the upper middle class. I mean, something that will create probably like new types of kindergartens and new forms of.
Is it really so, Mr. Rowe, that your colleagues choose for their child's such lifestyle?
In our community, every parent is talking about screen time and the maximum amount that's healthy. And we're also noticing with Facebook and these things some really bad trends, very quickly increasing anxiety in society. Yeah, and so we're beginning to understand what we need to change.
Yeah. I'm just exhibiting behind you the statistics that I've, sorry for not having another screen, that I found recently about what has changed after, lifestyles became so popular, after smartphones and iPhones became so popular, how they affected the not only way we live, but also the way, our identities, right? So this is a small question that I believe we will address promptly about how technology affects our identities. But let's get back to this later.
It's very important topic because we are speaking about technology from few minutes, and it's very interesting because we are forgetting about the operating system we are in, and it's called capitalism. And capitalism is driven by technocracy, and the main strategy of technocracy is
to increase profits.
Desocialization. So we are moving from the moment where we had communities. We are moving to the moment where we only have operating individuals, and it's causing mental diseases. And all of that we've been speaking about, and I think it's important to address this issue.
I absolutely agree, and I think though that society is beginning to offer alternatives. In fact, we're here in Hub, which is a co-working community. That's a new concept in the last decade, and it's a community. People are coming together and deciding, instead of being quite so isolated, maybe instead of working from their computer remotely or virtually, they're saying, no, I want to be around people, I want to make connections. That's what CIC, for those of you who know what CIC is, that's what we do in the United States. I see a huge growth in the increase in the interest in physical, real community, playing board games and going running and those kinds of things together.
Okay, so we will get back to this after summarizing our discussion, when we will, pick up the contemporary lifestyles or lifestyles of contemporary. I just want to show you the nice parole I found, that offline is the new luxury. And yes, and look, if you have, the luxury, only very rich person, in sense not only of capital sense, but in sense of personality and strength, inner strength, has this comfort of operating offline. But I believe we can get back to this in half an hour or something. But so we're getting back to this question you haven't answered. I mean, do you believe that lifestyle accelerates our modes of consumption, and is it maybe its main function? Yeah, and maybe it's therefore reproduces social inequalities.
Well, I think what is being affected, I mean, we are getting affected by as a media, by the products, by the companies. So definitely, you know, that increases the capitalism, because that's the whole idea behind it. So when you say it's a new lifestyle now, I mean, things change. There was a lifestyle when you had a Nokia phone. You know, you are disembarking from the aircraft, everybody switch on the telephone, and there was this special noise, you know, beep, 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 beep.
Yes.
It's gone now. It's not there. Yeah. Now
but
it's smartphones and everything.
Nokia is getting back. I mean,
well, it's not the same charm. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the time has passed. So I'm definitely the lifestyle effects, and it, in my opinion, it does give an edge to the capitalism for sure. You know, because the people tend to get new things. They are going after that because the sphere, the social area where they're living, they see what the other people are wearing, using. So they want to go after the same thing, you know.
Okay. Alek Tarkowski.
I have a bit of an issue with framing the question like that, because I think lifestyles are tied to inequality, but lifestyles, I think if you work in marketing, and I don't, I even avoided that topic in my sociological studies, then probably you think of lifestyle like a tool you can wield. You can like shape lifestyles, and you know, you figure out trends, and then you segment, and you can like play with a lifestyle, and something happens to people. I think lifestyles are inherent to people. You know, you have a lifestyle, and the thing you can look at is that they're very varied, and I don't want to make too big of generalizations, but I think when we look at inequalities, I would say we see today there are big communities in big parts of the society in Poland where lifestyles are very sort of shared and communal. You know, I think last weekend and how many Poles did the ritual of having a grill, and it's not the nice American barbecue. They buy these like aluminium tinfoil thingies, and you buy some cheap sausage and some kaszanka, and you do that, and you feel it's being done. It's a ritual done by your colleagues and friends, and the friendly smoke and smells waft from every garden. But the other part of the society has lifestyles that are extremely fragmented, and that's what I said about technologies. And we all like that. We listen to varied music, eat strange food, you know, and sort of, especially in Poland, in a society which for so long has been so monotonous in many ways, but also monotonous, you know, we're ethnically not very diverse. That's the biggest, I think it's a big problem, by the way, for us, that sort of history gave us, where suddenly some of us really are happy that lifestyle is not something communal, but it's hyper-personal.
Sorry, Natalia?
Led to individualism. I mean, it enhances individualism in the society that was for a very long time. Yes, I mean the social life was not about the cult of individualism. I think that I agree that capitalization of lifestyle is linked to creating inequalities in the sense that it's excluding certain people from certain products. Especially in fashion, but also when you think about commercialization of certain subcultures in the history and how they were tied to lifestyles, early lifestyles, from like dandy culture in the late 19th century, you know, punk culture, beat culture in California, you know, how it became something more open and then like capitalize on. Exactly,
the story of, for example, Che Guevara. It's a famous example.
Like, and right now, I mean, our subcultures are mostly virtual subcultures, you know, like online subcultures and subcultures led by brands.
So it's more about fantasizing the way we live, not living the way we talk about and we fantasize.
I don't know. I guess this is a question to sociologists more so.
Are you really saying?
But I think
is a fantasy?
Yeah, it creates real experiences.
Maybe it's just a change of interface.
Yes,
they are using.
So Mr. Singh told about medias and one of these factors. Therefore, I address this question: how lifestyles are being produced nowadays. So, what is the role of big brands and pop culture medias?
Well, I mean, it's all around us. You see, it's actually, you see what you see on the media, what they're showing on the TV. I mean, the bigger thing is people right now tend to watch telly instead of, reading books, doing something else. Same, the kids are more in towards computers and everything. Now, how this is happening? We are seeing every day the adverts on the streets, all right? We are listening to the radio, then we are listening to the ads there, then we are watching TV. We want to opt that, and that's our, internal sort of thing what we want to go for. So definitely the media is influencing, although I fully agree that everybody is having the individual lifestyle.
Individual.
Of course, I mean, it's your choice. Like, for example, in my case, I'm off the grid. I'm not on the Facebook.
Uh-huh.
So somebody when looks at me, you're not on the Facebook? Yes, I'm not.
And
So it's individual.
do you recall how this series, so Dynasty, what was the...
Oh my God.
Yeah, how it affected Polish culture in the early 90s, right?
Oh, it did.
Yeah.
It did, because I'm here since 89, so yes, it did.
Yeah, so but we moved a bit forward, I mean, with technology, and now you have influencers, right? And you have mega influencers, you have macro influencers, and the most reliable, the most authentic are these micro ones. So those influencers who have no more than 50,000 followers, they create lifestyles, or do they not?
Well, I mean, it again depends. Now, again, I'll take my example, okay? If I'm not on the Facebook, I'm not on the Instagram, so these people who are creating that lifestyle, because a lot of people who are on the social media, creating a lifestyle what the people would like to live, or they are actually fantasizing that. So it depends, which sphere of life you are. But definitely, I fully agree, even those people also who are there, they create certain kind of a lifestyle which people would like to live.
Okay, I have a very controversial example for you. You know, her name was Esena O'Neill. You know the story of Esena O'Neill? And she...
should I?
Yes, something omits you very important.
Oh my
I mean,
God.
Esena O'Neill, she was an Instagram influencer, and she still is, but she came out with her traumatic experience of being very desperate and lonely because she was spending all her months, even days and months and weeks, just making pictures for Instagram and doing money with it. Yeah, and then she realized that she is very depressed and very lonely and desperate, and made a story out of this. Yeah, about how artificial her life was. And this is a perfect example of this fantasy that we create our image by use of media, by use of technology, and then this image can depress us, right?
Yeah, I think personally that social media is just a new way of being alone. It's not social at all.
Social differently.
Exactly.
I'm feeling the need to jump in. I'm sensing a couple of threads here that are not exactly the same as the kind of conversations that we're having back in Boston, and maybe I can just shine some light on that. So hearing this group, I hear a lot of concern with capitalism. We love it back in the United States. Just kidding. And I'm feeling a lot of concern with technology and the kind of negative impacts, which are real. But I guess I want to highlight a couple of things. So on the technology side, just as we can have non-real relationships that are entirely online, it mediates, as I think you were saying, Natalia, some very real personal connections. So Aurelius, one of the organizers here, I don't know if he's in the room, not everybody knows this, but he organized a group of owners of pugs, the kind of dog, that little dog called a pug?
I don't know
what
have
it is
photo
in
of it,
Polish.
but everyone knows
Okay.
pugs, yes.
And I think they have like 10,000 pug owners now that have, joined this group. And when 12,000? 12,000. And when they have gatherings, like in parks here in Warsaw, you have hundreds of pugs and people who own pugs and have chosen this lifestyle getting together in person. And one of our colleagues, Kuba, was saying that it seems like it's an error in the matrix. Because suddenly, like, you see pugs everywhere. It's like it's being copied accidentally by the software.
Copy-paste.
And so, so these people are having a very real personal connection around something that they care about that was enabled by that technology. The same way that if you are, maybe you're transgender, which is 1% of the population, and you didn't know anyone in your school, and you felt isolated, but now you can get together with people who have that same background.
So you are not stressing positive sides.
Yeah,
how
exactly.
technology
And in person. So
in person.
so these crossovers are significant. I do think we need to learn how to manage the virtual only connections, which are not terribly healthy, and move them into the real world. On the capitalism side, I do see of course the brands are trying to sell more and so forth, but in my community what I'm seeing is people are buying less, they're sharing things, they're using many sharing services mediated by the technology not to buy. Many people are not buying cars any longer. They used to be buying cars, but now they're sharing cars.
Exactly.
Both through Uber, but also giving their own car to other people to use. And we're seeing that with their houses. We're seeing that now down to the point where almost any given thing you need, you can probably get in Boston for free because someone has it and they don't want it anymore, or for almost no money. So we should probably, and then I'll say just a little bit bigger picture. We're talking a lot about robots now in my community, and how we expect the robots to probably do most of the work that we do, which is going to create challenges for humans. But the real challenges are, what do we do with our time? It's not so much that we will be slaves of an economy in a kind of capitalist sense, but more that we're going to be asked, in a world where there's plenty, how do we navigate that as humans? So I just thought I would share. These are some of the kinds of questions that may relate ultimately to the new lifestyle that I hear talked about in where I come from.
If I can add to that, so the example of sharing, I'm very happy to report, connects Boston with Warsaw. I live in a neighborhood in Warsaw, Stary Mokotów, where there's a community group that emerged spontaneously on Facebook. Had some name changes for a long time. It was called Stary Mokotów Gang. It doesn't need any company running it. We're not using traditional modes of associating. We don't have an association. It's just like this group because Facebook allows it. Around 3,000 people sharing things. Weird story. They have some issues with buying things from each other. So the typical currency is avocados. Now it's changing because apparently avocado growing is not very good for the environment. So we might need to go into, I don't know, beets or something. But it is interesting, and I find it interesting that you extrapolate into the future, and it's good to have these conversations that maybe scenarios can be positive. I recently read the term, I really like it. It's completely extravagant, especially in Poland. The scenario you're describing, some people call it fully automated luxury communism. And they do it seriously, which is weird. I wanted to use it because if we say capitalism, we can maybe also say communism. But that's the scenario, problems are solved. You have a lot of time. Communist utopia in a way. But last thing I want to say also, I think there's a space between these public influencers. It's all in the public, right? When you're in the public, even if you're small scale, even children learn these moves. They write posts as if they were press secretaries. They make photos as if they were models. But there's a space below that. There's a thinker on the west coast of the US, I think he's called Venkatamaran Rao. He's a former startup guy, and he came up with this term cozy web, and that's the invisible web. It's not the public World Wide Web. It's services like WhatsApp and Telegram, where a lot more people now are making a group of 10 people, 100 people, 10,000 people, but they really have no need to show off, to have publicly available photos. And he's arguing, and I think he's right, it's a growing segment, and in these groups, you consciously build a different, you don't want to be another Ewa Chodakowska, right, at your tiny little scale.
I agree. Basically, I agree that things are not as black and white. Why not? No, I'm kidding. Not as black and white as this tech dystopia that was very prominent in the media at least like 2-3 years ago. Well, of course, it's not just technology, it's celebrity culture that's driving this narcissism on Instagram and Facebook and whatever. But on the other hand, and as much as I'm skeptical and I buy into this lifestyle of sharing and building my own identity on these platforms, when I speak to people, to activists, for instance, from marginalized groups, I mean, this is the only democratic platform, even though, yes, it's a huge corporation and there are hashtags and different indicators that can be, measured and certain products can be sold based on that choices. I mean, for many groups, this is this and WhatsApp, but more so actually like the Instagram and Facebook rely on visibility. It's a space of visibility of marginalized groups.
So there is still a chance in believing in internet as a democratic space.
I just think you can hack it. I mean, and you should hack it. And while I'm also interested in the use of robots in the future of labor, I'm not an economist or sociologist, but I wonder, like, okay, we'll have a lot of free time, but we'll also have a huge unemployment. We'll have a lot of angry people without jobs. So what are we going to do with that?
That's why it has to be communism.
Yeah, they give them so-called
I'm not a fan of communism at all.
minimal income, right? Well, and nevertheless, we're still afraid of technology, and you know, everybody knows this Black Mirror series, right? That speculates about consequences of how technology is being used. In fact, not only may be used, right? When you evaluate everything and everyone, and you do everything you can possibly do to boost up your public image, even if it's total fake, right? So this was the story of SNA O'Neill in a real life, although, right? So why we still are afraid that much of technologies in our life? Because you said many positive thoughts, you gave many positive thoughts about technology now. Even Natalia thought that you can use internet to hack, you know, to hack capitalist culture. Yet we have great thoughts about, for example, you know, privacy nowadays. As you may all well know, one of trends will come by soon is staying offline, right? So this new luxury, because we know that our smartphones are in fact spying tools, right? So,
you know, I would not say that I'm personally afraid of technology. I'm pro-technology. It's good. But some of the question is how we are using it, how we are making use of it, what we are giving out, how much information we are giving out, how much we are secure in a sense that when somebody is asking a certain information online during the shopping and anything, how much you want to share. So I think people should understand that first, because technology is there out to help us. I'm not against it. But the question is how we are using it. You know, sometimes the wrong use of technology can turn back against you. So that's the only thing I think people have to think. I am not on the Facebook just because of my choice. It's not that I'm afraid of it. I don't have time for it. I'm on LinkedIn. That's enough for me.
Yes, but I think
Iza?
there is still a lot of people that their lifestyles that are like, especially in smaller communities, not in big cities, where people mostly use all this social media and everything to communicate themselves, because there is like bigger communities and it's faster. I think smaller communities, they are just they are built on trust, that they know all the neighbors and they know everybody. And I think then if you have like they are afraid of, and they are very easy to manipulate in a way. So this is also the like political stuff and things. So, you know, you were saying about this fake information and things like this. A lot of people that know how Facebook, they were growing up with Facebook and stuff. They know how it works. They know how to choose what is fake, what is fake information, what is not. There is like a lot of this people getting that got used to live in without it, that doesn't understand and are easily to manipulate. Even it's not about education, but about lifestyles.
You are telling about manipulation and how big brands or whole capitalist system is using progressive lifestyles to seduce us. I have a couple examples. Like, you know, when you have big shoe company and you want to sell more shoes to people who believe in zero waste culture, then you are giving them one product, right? Maybe you, Agnieszka, could tell a bit more about this strategy, because for me it's obviously cynical. Yeah?
Of course, they want to thrive, so
Yeah.
I perfectly understand it. But I think it's important to see it as an opportunity because they won't stop operating like from tomorrow. So they have to change their operating system. You've shown it was Adidas or Nike, yeah.
Yeah.
And Nike, for example, they are moving their production back to the States, and it's very inspirational because they are making people like their neighborhoods involved in the production process. So for me, it's a really information of the change of thinking. So the system will collapse if they stop operating. So they can't do it from day to day. So they have to change it one way or another. But I think this is a good example because they're moving to the circular economy to make a less smaller impact, bad impact on the environment. So of course it is a marketing, but I don't think that every time is a greenwashing.
Greenwashing.
As we think, greenwashing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, this is the term. Okay, so do you believe that lifestyles may have subversive potential? They can hack the system, the capitalist system. I
Yes.
ask this because, I don't know if you read this article in The Guardian about how neoliberalism cons us to fighting climate change as individuals. So that the responsibility is on each of us and our lifestyles, and not on the governments, not on the system, not on the big companies. And I think it is an interesting thought in this. I mean that even very progressive, very subversive lifestyles can be used by the system, so by big companies, big capitalist companies, to seduce us, to sell us more stuff, just, right? So what to do with this? You have any thoughts?
Double check.
That will double check. So be critical, be aware.
Yeah, I think so, but we have this opportunity to be aware. And as you've said before, not everybody has this opportunity. And if you are on this basic level of your needs that need to be fulfilled, you're not thinking about environment because you have nothing to eat tomorrow. So, so I think it's very progressive of us of thinking about these topics. I don't know if you girls agree, because
yeah, definitely. But I was just thinking that I guess what you're referring to, Ivo, is that don't use just biodegradable straws. I mean, it's not a question about using biodegradable straws and plastic cups anyway, but let's say affecting your government not to have like the biggest coal mine in Europe. I mean, how can technology help us infrastructures and systems rather than just simply lifestyle, consumer lifestyles? For me, this is like my own.
This is a political question
This is a
because
political question.
Youngsters, they are voting for our governing party, and they have the quite a specific narration, populist narration, but they do a lot of research.
But that political choice, one could argue, was also based on the fact that they have been excluded from certain lifestyle, or maybe not the youngsters, but let's say the 35 to 45 age group. The millennials.
I'm speaking about the group that is till 29 years old, and they are very conservative, like most of them.
Yes.
And this is because they are threatened about this acceleration we are observing now, and exclusion. Exactly.
Sorry for interrupting. I have perfect examples, but I want two questions I really like to ask you. You are telling now that lifestyle is indeed political, inherently, in a way. But has politics become lifestyleish? This is a question that is worth considering. But I will give an example of the trend, you gave about this tendency of lending toward populism. I don't know if you know the brand, which is, this is Red is Bad. Yeah, So this is the first official international journey of our president, and he is wearing by accident the shirt you can buy in this store. By accident, obviously it is. I cannot show you the marks, the quotation marks. Yeah, but the brand was built fully recognizing this niche, this deep need for.
It's super interesting because we see so many brands bubbling up. For example, I can mention Polish Catholic fashion brand. It's called Marizeli, and they are growing fast, and they are building a chain like LPP, actually. And they are selling so-called modest fashion.
So what's the name of it?
Modest fashion. So
the name of the brand?
Marizeli.
Marizeli. So it doesn't sound very
It's
Polish.
a saint person, Marizeli. She's saint.
Okay.
So it's very interesting because I think they're in the same place actually. They're very, very, very narrow in their narration, and they are.
But they are delivering something that is needed, right?
Exactly.
Identity. Fantasy about self-identity. This is how I recognize.
I think I'll answer your question. In the present times where we are living, now whether it's India from where I come, or whether it's Europe, or whether it's US, with all due respects, nationalism, and I would say somehow not explained patriotism is becoming lifestyle, which you can see in today's world where we are living around.
So it also perpetuates consumer choices.
Definitely.
Alek?
I would say these examples are sort of another example of what I was trying to explain, that the other part of this story is that on the sort of other side of the political spectrum, there is some, I heard, tiny company that's trying to make hardcore leftist T-shirts that are sold in like hundreds or maybe tens of units. And there, it's an issue there. I think this is, again, this thing that for some groups in the society, they don't want lifestyles to be mass-produced. They don't want to connect lifestyle with politics. And these are just two very different approaches to lifestyles. This is, you know, really a phenomenon if you walk on Warsaw streets and Polish streets and you see amount of T-shirts with, this is interesting for you to, in the US, patriotism is something very standard. You know, you have a flag, right? 4th of July, it's not political, I think, it's just patriotic.
Schools, right?
In Poland, for a long time, waving a flag was pretty nationalist and often in a sort of not the best sense, but I think this is going to change. And it's going to change through these pop cultural moves. Just, you get a T-shirt, it would really be, even for some old people, I think, offensive to get a T-shirt that has a sort of a fake, you know, armband of the uprising. Now it's just a typical T-shirt.
Yeah, and
I
a
think,
sticker on cars.
And it's just interesting that this part of the society picked up T-shirts, which are often seen as countercultural, you know, things punks use, or I don't know, skates, and now it's a way to build a Catholic identity. Very interesting.
But it's also a proof or an argument that capitalist system sucks everything in. The term for that is appropriation, yeah, and yeah. So another one, but I forgot the name.
I don't think that owners of this brand think of themselves as capitalists and about making money. I think they're very happy that they're spreading a certain lifestyle.
Okay.
And they're very smart that they're using market forces to do that, because if they tried doing it as some kind of a foundation, they wouldn't get there.
Okay. Mr. Rowe?
I was just nodding to this notion. I think in activism, marginalized communities, we're all starting to say, well, why don't we use these same tools? You know, why not have brands and fashion, and you know, even the what is it, more conservative fashion movement is the same thing. It's saying, hey, these are our values. Let's spread that through traditional tools. I'm not sure that that's a bad thing. I think this is just how we're communicating and expressing ourselves. I don't feel, though, looking around, that the main movements of society are driven by money interests. As I talk to, as I see young people and the things that they're interested in, they're interested in all kinds of crazy things. If you look at what they do online, it's, as I said, it's like they play fantasy board games and things like that. That, I mean, maybe somebody's making a little bit of money, but not significantly. So I think that just society is creating, ever recreating culture. That's a really healthy thing, because if you think of the alternative, that we have to stick with the culture we had, before, that would be pretty scary. And I do think that we are going into uncharted territory. I mentioned robots. I want to mention two other things that are not yet being discussed much, but which are about to change all of our experience. Some of you may know that world population is currently predicted to peak in the next 3 decades. So we've been growing for 100,000 or 3 million years or whatever. What did you? Well, that's freaky. Except the current version of this has it flat here. I don't know if this is the Deutsche Bank forecasts that are kind of, most people are saying are most accurate. It's flat at this point. It goes down. Elon Musk
say about tsunami, right?
Something like that. Elon Musk is starting to talk about this, and he thinks that the population is going to crash. And the reason is that we're actually all doing okay now. So we have enough food, we have better medical and so forth. So we're not having many kids. Kids are expensive, a lot of work. And so if that happens, we're going to have a lot more of everything. More buildings, more schools, more everything than we really need. At the same time, this is happening with energy. So we've been very concerned about energy and global warming, and we should be, but we're approaching that point where energy is available everywhere and is almost free. So the technologies are increasing, or getting better at a very steady rate. But when that compounds, we get to the point where all of your energy is basically free. And we're talking about decades, not hundreds of years, for that to happen. So when energy is free and you've got more buildings than you need, you've got more land that you need, and population starts to fall, we're going to be in we're no longer in the contention for resources world that has shaped all of our thinking for millennia. And I'm just going to put it out there to start thinking about, well, what does that really do? I think what it does is actually mean that these ideas that we're talking about, like, Karl Marx goodbye, or hello Karl Marx, or whichever your flavor is, start to actually be more important, because we're no longer as worried about, are we going to be able to eat? We start getting caught up in these big ideas. I think it's potentially very scary. It's going to be very interesting.
So can I propose a thought experiment? I sometimes do it, and I wonder what your answer would be. And so the world is working pretty well. It's the positive scenario. There's energy. There's, let's say, universal basic income. We're not in a state where there are like wars and drought. It's pretty good. And you have a decent life, but it's not a luxurious life. And you don't have work, and you have a lot of free time. Yeah. And what are the 3 most popular things you think people do with their free time? Because I have my answer. I can give it to you, but do you want me to start?
Yeah.
I'm going to call on people in the audience.
I can give one. One, I think, amateur football leagues and football fans, big time, all the time. And second is like almost professional commenting wherever you can, Take any portal and just do it because it's your lifestyle, Religiously do it 8 hours a day. So these are my 2 ideas.
And making selfies. Yeah.
Okay, that's yours. Would you like to join this little thought experiment?
I have to think.
Yeah, okay, so...
Well, I mean, if I'll have time, definitely I would like to read books.
Read books.
Which are there on my shelf, which I really touch, so yes, for sure.
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Still, I have to think that I have no work and no money.
Yeah,
so
but you have minimal income. Yeah.
Okay.
Robots are working for you. Doing your job.
I would spend my time in park, maybe.
No.
Just to be in fresh air.
Yes, Natalia, what would you do if robot were curating art exhibitions?
I would be very miserable because it's my lifestyle.
It's my lifestyle.
No, it's not my lifestyle. It's actually service, and it's the most important thing in my life, apart from family and relationships. And I think this is a very valid question, and I would like to notice that we keep making these statements in plural we, So like we speak from a very privileged position. I mean, I actually don't understand how this utopia of perfect world is going to arrive. But and I have a comment that maybe speaks a little bit to your idea of football, because for me, like mass sports spectacles are actually a moments of exerting this accumulating energy that people don't know what to do with. So I hope that football will be legal, because if not, I mean, we might have like state of anarchy, chaos, and violence. I mean, this is also an alternative.
Yes.
So maybe we should sustain lifestyles
we have
until
very
robots,
dystopian
so
and
people
pessimistic instincts about the future. We don't know it, so we're afraid of it.
No, but like, no, like all indicators are actually telling us that this planet will collapse. I mean, it's not
you know, there
about-
is a book.
Not all indicators.
Yeah, you know the book entitled Factfulness? I don't know. It's the name of the author is Rosling. He just died. He was a Swedish doctor who became statistician. And yeah, Factfulness. He gives, you know, hundreds of examples how, in fact, I mean, according to the statistics gathered by international banks and World Economic Forum and so on, how our planet is getting better and better.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go. Steven Pinker has a wonderful TED talk on this, where he says, for instance, Natalia, that the number of people who die from disease has fallen like 100 times. The number of people who die from war has fallen like 100 times. He says that our newspaper has to fill up with equally interesting things every year. So we take whatever bad things happen and we give them the same promotion they got the previous year. But if you look at basic statistics, it's actually getting wildly better. There are a few things that we might do badly that will kill us all, like global warming. So we have to be careful about that. But in fact, it does seem to be getting better. I'll also give another statistic that's helpful. At least in the United States, at the year 1900, a little over 200 years ago, we had something like 97% of our population was involved with agriculture. In other words, what they were doing was making food. And because that's what you needed to do with the technology then for us all to be able to eat. And now it's like 3% are in agriculture. And actually we're still here. It's, you know, the sky didn't fall and people are like digital marketing consultants, right? Which was not a job back then. So what happens is, you know, as the things that we do now, we don't need to get done because the robots are doing them. We're all going to do more things. And I actually think art is one of the things that we're going to do a lot more of.
Exactly. Yeah. So look, when you are doing, with smartphones, for example, they were intended to make our lives simpler and make more things easier. But in fact, we are doing more and more and more. They accelerate our activities. Yeah. Agnieszka?
It's natural for us that we accelerate, so I don't think that we'll be watching football games all the time and lying down. Maybe some of us.
Maybe playing virtual games in virtual reality. Maybe
still gaining money on it. Because I don't think that we will be satisfied with universal basic income.
Sorry for interrupting, but we have still about 20 minutes of discussion left, and I think most of our guests here, I mean our public, is interested about your choices and your educations about contemporary lifestyles. I mean, we're talking a bit about it during our discussion, but if you just could, you know, single out these most and name, you know, pinpoint the most important, most significant, and most progressive lifestyles of contemporary, what would be your choice? Maybe not one, maybe two or three. You can start.
I can distinguish two lifestyles, like rural and or urban, and it's this polarization is
rural and urban. Okay.
Exactly. It's very visible right now. That's.
I think this is a good
in the
picture
city,
for it.
in metropolis, we are trading our freedom and our data for being in the city and to explore it, to have all these economical opportunities. In rural space, we have this freedom, but we don't have this economical possibilities. And I think that more and more often we have to make a choice.
So you are telling right now about two general lifestyles of contemporary. and you separate this
Yes,
between
because
urban
of
centers
course
and-
here in Poland it's not so visible, but
Yeah.
if we
Here in the city.
exactly,
But we-
but
you
we,
drive
if
to
we
the
are
country.
talking about Tokyo or New York,
Mhm.
the distinguish is quite big.
That's interesting. Yeah.
I would say because technology is, gearing up very fast. It's more like we are living very much automated life and digital. So that's a new lifestyle I see right now, which is very contemporary. I mean, if I take that, of course, I agree with you. In the villages, it can be a little less, but back again, giving the example of India, where actually in the villages they never used to have any telephone and electricity, but right now they're having the access to the mobile telephone.
Yeah, in Africa. Yeah.
So you see, I
The
mean,
biggest mobile market.
that's connected. That's more digital.
So connectivity, contemporary.
So you asked what are the most progressive,
I asked,
kind of
yes,
edgy
if you had
lifestyles.
any, yeah, and
and
edgy.
something I see in my kids, and my son Sam is here. If you want to wave, Sam. Something I see in my kids, and Sam's the oldest of three, is a radical lessening of interest in material goods. Material goods. So, so kids Sam's age in the teenager years, when I was growing up, wanted a car as soon as they could get it. Sam didn't want a car and still doesn't know how to drive, right? They don't. When I say, "Can I get you the Apple Watch?" then you'll be able to see my messages. When I say, they're like, "No, I don't want an Apple Watch." And so all of these things. So I'm seeing in this generation of the teens, if you will, a radical disinterest in material goods. And I think that's pretty interesting and pretty anti-capitalist.
It's super interesting because we are doing a lot of research within Generation Z, and it's I think it's interesting because it's the first generation that is
Here you have
actually
infographics about-
living the consequences of capitalism. So they have different needs and thoughts about it.
Expectations.
And what is more important, it is really a first generation that not was only told to work together, but they were really educated. And I'm an old millennial, and I was told to work together, but I don't know how to do it actually. And Generation Z is actually taught to work with people. So I think there are really real game changers here. So kudos for your son.
Kudos.
So for me, a progressive lifestyle involves doing hands-on things, especially with technology. I think this is, again, if we talk about like positive and negative approaches, a very empowering thing to do is just get in contact with technology as its maker and creator, and it's doable pretty easily. Arduino, Raspberry Pi, Microbit, you can name it. I try to, this is a big personal challenge for me. I have 2 young daughters. They're not really interested in technology. I still try, and for me it's hard to find time to do that, but I think simple things you do. But it's not only about technology. I think making your own food instead of eating it, in bars every day because you don't have time to cook. If you want to get really, more into it, have a bit of a garden maybe a communal one, things like that. I think it also gives a very good, it has to do with mindfulness, with peace of mind, with a lot of things like that. And but I also wanted to say, don't want you to think this is immediately going into offline. The technology is there. And speaking about generations, I found out there's like this micro generation they call Xenials, which is really silly, but some marketer needed a term. It's apparently between millennials and Generation X, and I fit in it. And it's only 6 years, so it's very hard to be in it, so we can feel very special. And its single defining factor is that you were at the moment where as a young adult you had you knew the world without the internet, and you were at the start of the world with the internet. It's a very good place to be because I think we are the ones, if I'm to brag a bit, who can think in terms of a balance. It doesn't have to be like all in or all out, but maybe we are the ones, special ones who get the balance.
So progressive lifestyle. So we mentioned Gen Z, we mentioned millennials. I don't know if everyone know the terms. Just to pick up some infographics because where are the millennials? Oh, here are millennials. So most of us are representatives of so-called millennials. In fact, I heard an interesting question. A question posed by a recognized trend analyst Zuza Skalska, who expressively stated that there are no millennials in Poland. Okay, so this is an interesting question. You know, yeah, I mean, because what makes peculiar this millennials? I mean, what makes all these social groups peculiar is their needs, their habits, their expectations, their lifestyle and behaviorally, right? And I thought that this is interesting thought. I mean, that there are no millennials, or at least this is not a massive movement, because we have rural areas and we have big cities. We have rich people, rich young people who are born in 80s, right? And went to private schools and have parents who are enabled them to see the world. But this is not a common experience in Poland. How do you think about this idea that there are no millennials in Poland? How do you find this idea interesting, or?
I think they are different in every country because of history. So here we are, and I am a millennial, and I'm totally blending in with all the set of values of millennials. But of course, they are different. There are different millennials in China. There are different millennials in USA. I think the biggest distinguish is the amount of money we have. Because in Poland we are still building, we still have some kind of traditional families. We are not divorcing so much, like I don't know, people, for example, families in USA. So then we still have this money of family, and in USA the situation is totally different because people are gaining less and less money. So millennials is the first generation that is actually poorer than ever generation before. Yeah. And here I think it's quite blending in, but there are so many there is a set of values that we embrace here in Poland.
So since we
if
have
I can say for millennials,
15 minutes until announcements, I just will help you with certain indications that I found in many different reports about contemporary lifestyles. First of all, when you ask about contemporary progressive ones, there comes this circular economy and zero waste lifestyle. So, yeah, everybody recognize it. I mean that we are entitled and maybe even we are pressed to be more aware about our consumer choices. So we do not perform linear economy anymore. We have to reuse, upcycle, right, and rethink our consumer habits. Cut plastic out. There are even malls in Sweden, or first one at least, which is totally orientated towards circular economical products. So everything what we can buy there is zero waste, right? Starting from food and until the clothes, up to the clothes. Then cooperativity or cooperativeness, I think, or it is at least recognized that this is one of the trends. We are cooperating and doing these cooperatives, food cooperatives. We are cooperating in our offices, so like Hub or CIC, this is community. And it's going to be bigger and bigger, this trend. Also, you are telling about this split between cities and rural areas. But there is something like urban gardening and permaculture and urban farming that is also very growing as a movement, as a trend. Then it comes to foods and smart foods and foods that are dealing with expectations of contemporaries. So you don't have to go to restaurant. You can have a fast, nourishing and meal in your pocket, so that it's quick, that is relatively cheap. you don't have to resign from burgers, and you have artificial burgers, which taste the same, right? Or even better, I haven't ate one yet. Yeah, then new mobility, new kinds of mobility, right? Not only physical mobility, but also online mobility. We are using more and more computer cloud platforms. We are using more products as service. So we don't have, this is what Tim Rowe told before about how to live in Boston. Yeah, you don't have to buy a car, you don't have to buy a bike. You can rent it. And yeah, then we have cheap flights, or affordable tourism. Frontiers are open. More and more of us are working in mobile jobs, right? And this is getting bigger and bigger. We live still longer, and the modes of living, although so the idea of being elder also has changed, right? And it's changing due to the technology, to biotechnologies, to the healthcare system. We expect to live over 100 years with new veins, with new liver, right? Enhanced by technologies. But we also keep our bodies fit. And therefore we engage in new relationships, right? And new type of families. We will be talking here in a couple of months about new modes of relationships in society. The idea of family and single relationship for whole life, when you live 120 years, so there would be at least 100 years with one person. Who could bear this? I mean, yeah. So we're already witnessing it, right? Empowerment of women and other political minorities. It's also kind as another trend in lifestyles nowadays. And then we are approaching this new models of identity and of self-development, being empathetic, being mindful about others, about those minorities. So being responsible, so like fair trade, right? And being aware of how much data, and controlling your data, how much data you give to big companies, and trying to switch off, to be as offline as it's possible. So these are trends in lifestyles I found in many different reports. I don't know if you had any comments on that, because this is just brief summary of what we were talking before, right?
What you mentioned about earlier back, about the values and the stuff, which is a new lifestyle, empathy towards the other person, minorities, understanding the other person. I think that's a basic values of life. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, it's something like with the trends, with the new, a want for the new things, mm-hmm. to go further, we forgot that. Mm-hmm. And now we are coming back to it. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's always like basic, what you should have, a person should have in her or himself.
Mm-hmm. So, yes, Iza?
And actually you can see that, and when you were showing the trends and you were speaking about these different groups, I think very strong now is like the concentration on the group of 50 plus, the silver...
So-called silver generation.
Yeah, and I think what you said, like it's kind of now, in my opinion, now it's like mixing, like this young people that they have this feeling of they want to be together with themselves, they want to live in communities, they go back to these needs and things that are really important. They also, somehow it's like I see the connection between this and older people, and interesting projects that I see that there is like empathy designing for all elderly people, and these ideas of creating costumes that young young people can fit in and feel how
to do the body storming, how to be elder
how
person.
to be adult person on this kind of stuff. So I in this connection and trying to find this common things between people. I think this is the power in a way.
So have you anything to add? Okay, so one more question. For the last 5 minutes of our conversation, how do you think, what factors will change the way we live during the upcoming decade, so in the next years? What factors are crucial? What factors will affect us at the most? Yeah.
No doubt that it will be technology. But I think that we are already cyborgs. The telephone is, the smartphone is our extension
or wearables.
Today. Wearables are our extension. We can calculate things within seconds. We can search for things within nanoseconds even. And I think what will change, it will be the interface of the technology. It will blend in with us, and I think it will just accelerate. I mean, we see this acceleration, but it's going to be very fast. And I think some of people will see in the situation the new opportunity for them, but some of people will be threatened. And I think that this polarization is something we need to address as researchers, or as designers, or as workers. Or
okay, what other? So you told technology, right, Mr. Rowe?
Well, in my opinion, second, it will be the narrative from the people who are in power, politics around us. That will be the most important factor impacting us.
This is going to sound like a cliche, but the artificial intelligence in our lives is already here. For those of you who play with Google Home or Siri, it's doubling its capability about every year at this point. And that means that 10 years from now, our lives are going to be completely different. We're going to have essentially another person in our lives who does nothing but support us, which is an AI. It's like that movie, Her. I think this is looking very real. And that's probably going to have all kinds of scary and possibly nice implications.
Yeah, I would also say politics, actually.
Politics.
Okay,
Natalia.
Yeah, probably politics, technology, and climate.
Climate, yeah. What factors, yeah.
But actually, I was thinking about all these values that were mentioned next to millennials group. I was trying to figure out if I identify with them or whether they are pre-financial crisis values. Because some of these trends that you mentioned, Ivo, I think they stem from anxiety management.
Anxiety management, yes.
I believe like that we are, like mental health is one of the most crucial factors that determines lives of people, especially in big cities. And things like empathy, sustainability, peer-to-peer shared services arises from that. And I was really excited to hear what you mentioned about these shared economy lifestyles in your community, because I also think, and this is already visible, let's say like in my community, sharing Netflix account, or like hacking Netflix account with your friends, like basic things like that. Still consumer lifestyles, but.
Okay. So I just have another proposition. Yeah. So without AI, which seems obvious, we can think of consequences of development of 3D printing, nanocomputing, bioengineering, autonomous vehicles and other machines, robots, drones, remote diagnostics. These are all good candidates for these factors that will change our lives in next years, maybe decade, and will be a great turnover. And one thing for sure is that we cannot picture it yet in full extension, right?
Actually, it's I like when I see 3D printing here first, and I work in architecture field. I don't. A lot of architects were for many years thinking that 3D printing will change architecture totally, and actually I see totally different thing from the other side, that architecture is going to the other direction, that people want to reunion themselves, they want to make participatory architecture, this kind of stuff, instead of that this is just more about like just technical things, and I think about this usership things. Yeah. So it's actually going much stronger. This need, I feel it's stronger than the other one.
So after all our discussion, I have an impression that paradoxically, and this is not only an impression that I have from this debate, technology and its intensive development causes certain physical feedback. I mean, we are getting, we have enough of it, and we are turning ourselves toward empathy, human relations, being offline, and more cautious and aware, self-conscious use of technology, right? So, and this value turnover is something interesting, I believe. So, Alek?
Wishful thinking.
Wishful thinking.
What I also wanted to say, I think a lot of this is very aspirational. Like we are, let's say, like we would like to, and so maybe you are talking about the future, but like, are we really going offline? Like honestly, how many times this week, and so on, right? Aspirations, yes, but
so fantasizing.
What I would say about this list, when you say AI, I agree, but with a lot of more detailed technologies, I often don't like visions of the future that just mention a technology. I think betting on just the technology, technologies may pass. If you mention a technology and something else, if you say that, and I don't know, trust or well-being, that starts to make sense. It's a vision. I think you always need to add something to a technology to really think about it.
I remember one joke of one curator that was watching new media art piece from a student, and the student was speaking a lot about it and showing a lot, and the curator said, yeah, okay, but when there is no electricity, your art is not existing, you know, so in this...
Yeah. Okay, so I'm really sorry to finish this discussion, because I have always this feeling that we are just, you know, starting over and getting more and more engaged. But there is now a time for so-called announcements, so you can you are all pleased to welcome to go into this, you know, space beside the room. For a few minutes for these announcements, and then at 7:15, I invite you also for a very interesting meeting with very peculiar guest, with Igor Omulecki, who is one of the most significant Polish visual artists, and we will be talking about new dimensions and of photography, about new photography, new idea of photography, in the room back there at the end of the other part of the hall. And right now I want to thank you all for coming here, for giving us your time and your thoughts, and for you for taking part and staying that long without going out. Yes, so now the panel is officially over, and let's meet out there for announcements, right? Thank you very much. Thank you.